All right, we are back after many months of having to listen to bad opinions, terrible podcasters out there give their terrible opinions on the Maple Leafs, the doubts of the Florida Panthers.
Bro, we gave you guys a chance, you
We
know?
could not stand by any longer.
Yeah, we went off the market. We gave you the space, you know?
We
And
had a
we,
baby, not me and my brother. Me and my wife had a baby. And that is the only reason why we had to take the time off. So, to those listening that did subscribe, we apologize. So much has happened since our last video, but we're not gonna.
I don't think they missed us that much, man. I think it's
No,
okay.
they're probably like, oh, I think I remember these guys. Aren't these guys the brothers from the Maple Leafs? Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, let's get into it. We're gonna ease back into it. We'll try to do weekly videos as much as we can. Um,
Yeah, for the playoffs.
yeah, at least to get through the finals, and then we'll come up with a plan for next season. But we'll try to get back to normal. Anyway, let's get started. My name is David. I'm joined by my brother Daryl. We are the Florida Hockey Bros, Florida Panthers. Don't get it confused because we hate the Lightning. But yeah, we're gonna try to just get to a few of the series that are gonna be happening. We're recording this on Sunday before the Leafs and the Senators play, so we'll get into that series, the Panthers and the Lightning as well, and the Oilers and then the Kings. Those are the series that kind of intrigue us and that we have some strong opinions on. So, which one
And
you want to start with?
yeah, and that they haven't started yet,
Yeah.
which is also, I think, makes sense. And yeah, I think the other series, they're fun to watch, but just not as interesting. Even the Avalanche and Dallas, I feel like they're kind of similar teams and it could go either way. Um, but I want to focus on three teams with the Oilers, the Leafs, and the Lightning. Might be surprising in some of the takes, but just kind of what I think people have gotten wrong about what the teams actually are and what that might say about not just the series, but how these teams might do in the playoffs as a whole. I think we can start out west with the Oilers since we played them in the finals and they have had a crazy up and down season, kind of like the Panthers in some way. I think it's funny how both teams came into the season. Um, and I think the Oilers started like not really well, then got hot for a little bit, then got cold again, got injured. The Panthers kind of had ups and downs throughout the season, went on a couple runs and looked like crap for a while, and then ended the season kind of like with most guys out, people injured, people resting. Um, but it has to be said that I think when I look at the Oilers, um, you have all these questions about the goaltending, you have all these questions about defense. I know Ekholm's out at least for the first round, and so that with the Kings have looked better this season. To me, I think that even though the Oilers, I don't think are as strong as they were last year. They're older, they're not as fast. They lost Broberg, Holloway, and I think Skinner and Arvidsson haven't necessarily fit in to the extent that they expected it, etc. When you look at the underlying numbers, they have really underperformed in terms of their chances and in terms of what the team actually is. Like the Oilers, by the numbers, are offensively a good team. They don't hit a lot, but I know in the playoffs they're capable of hitting. They can play that physical game. They've shown that. They have some guys that can play a little bit nasty. And Draisaitl and McDavid are not afraid of contact. So what I'm seeing is a team that I think will beat the Kings in six. I think everybody's picking the Kings, or a lot of people are picking the Kings in 6 or 7, or at the very least saying it's going to go 7. That may be the case. I mean, this is a sport. Any predictor, you could be wrong. Any take could be wrong. Somebody could sweep somebody, nobody saw it coming, etc. Um, but my take is that I think the Oilers are better than people think, especially with the top guys. I think their hunger will be there. I think just kind of had a weird season because coming off that run, and same with the Panthers, it's just hard to replicate. I mean, look at Vegas last year. After winning, they won the first 2 games against Dallas and then lost 4 straight, I think, or lost in 7. So it's hard to do a back to back and all that stuff. And I think the Oilers, even though they didn't win, they went all the way to game 7. So I expect the Oilers to play hard, to play like they have been there, and they still have enough depth in the way that they have. And I think the Kings are more vulnerable than people think. The Kings are really, really good at home, not that great on the road. And I saw them against the Leafs recently toward the end of the season. I saw them against certain teams, and I don't think they're as physical as people think. I think that a lot of the defense can be hit. And I think they're vulnerable. I think they're a team that's good, but they're not, to me, a cup contender. And I think the Oilers, just because of the top talent, could technically be if they get hot. So even though I'll say more about the Oilers in terms of perspective of getting to the finals, at least in this series, I actually think they can win it in six. Close it out at home, and that's what I would expect. Now, again, the Kings may surprise us. Maybe they fall apart, and if they do lose in the first round, then the drama for the Oilers will be great in terms of what happens now with Mike Davis' contract and Bouchard and all that. But for now, man, I will say, looking at the numbers, I think the Oilers are better than the record says. I think the Kings are a little bit more vulnerable than they have shown. And I think a lot of people are, for strange reasons, the same reasons we can talk about later about the Panthers. I think they're sleeping on the Oilers a little bit. That's my
Yeah,
take.
yeah, and I think there's a sometimes when you look at history and how things happen in the past, we can all we tend to think that it's just gonna repeat itself. A good point isn't like teams that get hot, right? Everybody's like, "Oh, this team is going into the playoffs hot." St. Louis Blues, oh, just like 2019. Well, it's a completely different team. It's a different coach. It's a different system. There's no reason to believe that the Blues are gonna get to the finals again just because they repeated. They won 12 in a row, whatever the case may be. So I think with the Kings, it's kind of like they just they play well the second half of the season. They stay hot. It's just one of those things that becomes a narrative for some reason. But you're right about the Oilers, and similar to the Panthers last year, after getting to the finals the previous year, a lot of pundits weren't really looking at the Panthers as favorites, even though they were favored in some cases, only because they got there and they were healthy this time around. But I think with the Oilers, it's just they've had a funky season, like you said. There's been nothing that stood out other than the fact that they lost two young guys, two young players that could contribute. Um, but yeah, I think the Kings are whatever. I think the Kings are overrated if they're even properly rated by most people. I think that as long as Draisaitl is good to go, Mike Davis healthy, they should be able to take care of the Kings. Even if it goes 7 games, which I doubt. I think the Oilers can be physical. They're a big team. They're not small. They just, they tend to focus a little too much on the offense, which is what happens to a lot of these teams. And also they have, Skinner and net.
Yeah, they're vulnerable, but I don't think the Kings are the team to take them out. But
Right.
that's so my larger take on them is that I think Vegas and Avalanche are the two teams that can actually take them out.
Right.
And Dallas gave me a fight last year. In that last game, they outshot them and kind of dominated them on the road. In Edmonton, I just couldn't put it away. But I think the Oilers are vulnerable. I think the Oilers are vulnerable against the really, really top teams. Teams that have a balance between talent and maybe some forechecking. I think Vegas can be a bad matchup. I think Avalanche can be a bad matchup. I just don't see them falling in the first round. I see them falling in the second or in the conference finals. I don't know that the Oilers are going to get to the finals. I think that's going to be really hard for them because they are slower. They're all older. They have had injuries, and it's hard to replicate. And they are vulnerable. They are vulnerable against really, really top teams. But again, the Kings to me are not that. So that's my take on the Oilers, man. I wanted to talk a little bit about the Panthers and Lightning. I'm going to leave the Leafs and Sens for the end for any Leafs fans who come across this. Stay tuned for the hottest take at the end. But this is one thing with the Lightning. Everybody's picking the Lightning to beat the Panthers. I mean, most people are. I'm seeing everything from all the pundits to spitting chicklets. Almost everybody except like Keith Yandel, who played for the Panthers. Is picking the Lightning in 6 or 7, and I get it. The Lightning look hot to end the season, and they've had a season with a lot of offensive flair. I'm just going to give you some quick rapid fire facts about the Lightning this season in particular. They're 29th in hits. They don't engage physically at all very much as a team. They decided this season to play an open rush style of play. And this is why the regular season looked fun and they scored a bunch of goals. They're like one of the top 5 or 6 teams in goals scored. Their defense pretty good. That's because Vasilevsky has been incredible. He has a 921 save percentage, 6 shutouts. And they block shots. McDonough and all these guys can block some shots. But they don't engage physically. Their puck possession is pretty average, kind of middle of the road at 5-on-5. And this is what really curious to me, bro. Kucherov, 122 giveaways this season. That's a career high by like almost 30. Only 30 takeaways. He has 62 and 57 in the last 2 years. So he's not engaging much in taking pucks away, and is giving them away a like career high record. Brandon Hagel, 96 giveaways. Last year, 39. The previous year, 48. Selke votes. This year, 96, more than twice. He had 30 takeaways. Last year, 54. The year before that, with the Selke votes, 92. These guys are not engaging defensively as much, and they're giving it away a ton. Why? Because they're playing open. They're playing offense. They're playing rush. They're cheating. They're going to the opposite blue line, so they turn it over. But Vasilevsky's back there to save it, and then they can go and score a bunch of goals when it does work. Braden Point, the same. 45 giveaways only, but that for him is really, really high. Only 17 takeaways. Last year, 36. The year before, 51. So again, Victor Hedman, 119 giveaways. Last year, 54. Ryan McDonough, 115 giveaways. Last year, 56. Only 24 takeaways. 2 years ago, 47. So these guys are not hitting. They're giving the puck away a ton. And I'm not saying they're going to do this in the playoffs. Okay, don't get me wrong. I know in the playoffs, people try to clean things up, play harder. But this is their identities. This has become who they are. Over the last couple of seasons, they've become less of a physical team, less of a forechecking team. The one good thing they still do is go to the net, because of Point and Gensel and these guys like to go to the net. That's where they can get dangerous, especially on the power play. But physically speaking, they don't hit much. They're not used to it. Hedman and McDonough's hits numbers are down. That's another thing I noticed. Where the hit numbers for this year for Hedman, 39. Last year, 65, 95, 93. Only 39 this year. And the same for McDonough, which used to have 63, 99, 96, only 23 this year. So again, these are older guys who don't want to engage. They're being allowed by Cooper to play an open way, the way the Panthers were playing 3 years ago with Hooper doing all these guys. They're scoring a bunch of goals. They're looking good. But let me tell you this. Why is it that they're the number 3 team with the expected goals above expected, like the expected goal differential above expected, meaning they have more than plus 30 goals in differential that they shouldn't have, based on their chances, based on their possession, on their play, right? Which dictates how much they actually play the game of hockey. They've outperformed that by more than 30 goals, which is third highest in the league. And yet it took like the last 2 to 3 games of the season to put the Panthers away for that number 2 seed, even though the Panthers had a pretty mediocre season by all accounts. Why? Because the fundamentals of that team are not as good as you think. They have a tendency to give up. They have a tendency to throw away games. They haven't been as consistent as you think. And yeah, there are games where they just blow teams out, as the Panthers used to do 3 years ago. But then when it really gets hard, they're not going to have all the fundamentals there. They're just not going to be used to hitting, to the forechecking. And yes, they've been there. They have Vasilevsky. They have a shot at winning this series. I expect the Panthers to win in 6, even with the people that they have out, because of the matchup style, because of the forechecking, because of the tight checking, because the Panthers' fundamentals are strong on both sides of the puck at 5-on-5. If the Panthers can stay out of the box and just score some key goals against Vasilevsky, it's going to be really hard for the Lightning. Their chances to get power plays, to score on them, and for Vasilevsky to play lights out the whole series. I think from a matchup perspective and fundamentals, when the Panthers are healthy and trying, I think they're a nightmare matchup for the Leafs. We saw for the Lightning. We saw last year, put them away in 5. And I think it's also why the Leafs have owned the Lightning the last 2 to 3 seasons in the regular season. The Lightning have become an open rush team. They're not the same Lightning that used to block shots and just kind of play it tight. They don't do that anymore. And Hedman's older and McDonough's older. So anyway, I think people are blinded by how shiny the Lightning have looked, but they haven't really looked at the matchup problem, which the playoffs is huge, and they haven't really looked at the underlines. I think it's a bit of a mirage. And yes, they might get through the Panthers. I don't think they get through the Leafs, in rounds. I don't see the Lightning get into the finals like some people now have them. So anyway, that's my take on them. I might be wrong, but that's what I'm seeing. I'm seeing a team that I don't think is as good for the playoffs as people think. They're built for the regular season. So
yeah, and I think, well, when it comes to the matchup, I think a lot of it just has to do with the Panthers kind of being lackluster this year. They haven't really looked like themselves. I think, that cup, they were dragging a little bit the first like 30 to 40 games in the season, and that was kind of to be expected, and they kind of just wanted to get through the season and get to the playoffs. So I think that this is one of those sports where, and basketball started to become this, where you can't just look at the regular season because you might be blinded by, a team like the Rangers last year and their offense, and the Leafs and their offense, and all these things that kind of shrink when it comes to the playoffs. So yeah, I think your point is a valid one when it comes to the Lightning. I think they're being overvalued. Are they still dangerous? Yes. Can they still beat you in a 7-game series? Sure, they can outscore you, but they will have to outscore the Panthers. They're gonna have to score 4 goals a game, I think, to beat the Panthers, because when you look at the way they play, there's a lot of space behind them. So you are going to have your chances. You are going to have some high danger chances against Vasi. And the Panthers are not. We have such an intriguing team, because when you watch them during the regular season, if you watch that game on the back-to-back where the Lightning shut us down, I think it was 4-0 or 3-0, something like that. You would say, wow, like the Lightning were amazing. But if you look at the way we played, like the Panthers played like shit. They did not play like they wanted that game at all. And that's something that you have to look at. You have to look at how the opponent plays you. One of the things that frustrates me so much about teams that play the Toronto Maple Leafs is how soft they play them, where like the blueprint is there for the Leafs, for any team to beat the Leafs or give them a hard time at least. So in this case, it's the same thing. I think the Panther style, it's just such a tough matchup for almost everybody, except for maybe the Hurricanes. There might be 2 teams in the East, I guess, the Capitals and the Hurricanes, and they'll have to get through one of them if they want to get back to the finals. But yeah, your point stands, man. I've been hesitant on the Panthers and on picking them, and I haven't loved the season for them just because the effort hasn't been there. But I understand why the effort hasn't been there, and I understand why they've looked the way they looked. I'm sure Maurice has that in check. So let's see, man. Kachuk is going to be motivated. Ekblad is going to be motivated because he needs a new contract. And with this PED thing, he's going to have to play really hard when he comes back. So I expect Bennett, Kachuk to play really hard. Bennett, because he needs that money. He's probably asking for a lot now with the cap increase. And same with Ekblad. So I expect those guys to kind of show up and show out a little bit. Verhage has something to prove. He's had a really bad season, even though he's kind of tried really hard at the end. Mackey, is a rookie who's going to try to put his face out there. And Marchand wanted to compete. He wanted to go to a team that he had a chance to go to the finals with, and that's why he wanted Florida. So I expect the team to be motivated, man. And Bobrovsky doesn't. There's nothing you can say about him. He's a workhorse, and he's going to play hard.
Yeah, so it's a systems thing with the Panthers,
yeah.
man. Like the best games that played the season, they've looked at like themselves. They had the back-to-back on over there in Finland with the Stars, where they beat the Stars. They had a back-to-back with the Hurricanes, where they beat the crap out of the Hurricanes. They have looked good against, a 5-0 win against the Jets, where the Jets were trying. And the Panthers controlled the game. They've looked good against Vegas. They've looked good twice against the Leafs. They had 2 games that were tight and actually played tightly by both teams, that they beat the Lightning. So, and then you saw a run there with a bunch of guys out at the end of the season when they won 4 straight at home, and they were playing that system. And all the underlines, even when the losing streak they had before that, the underlines were really strong for the Panthers. They were playing the system. They just were playing like fourth liners in the second line, But I think what it shows is that the fundamentals of the systems are there. And the fact for this season, for the Panthers to still have the underlines be so strong, they're top 5 of 10 pretty much in most of the important categories at even strength on offense and defense.
Yeah.
With the defense being thinner, but now they're bringing Jones, and then the defense with Ekblad is going to be deeper. So I think that they're poised for another run. I think resting and not taking it as seriously and taking it easy and having some guys out, it's going to help them be rested, because that's the issue when you get tired in the playoffs. But that's what they've been able to afford, is to actually not be tired coming into the playoffs. And again, I'm not saying they're going to win the cup again. It's super hard and things have to break your way. The Lightning could beat them. But in terms of expectation, I am surprised that people are sleeping so much, and that people, with all the numbers available, with all the things, and like you said, David, like, watch the game. How did the other team play? Because I evaluate the Panthers that way. If the Panthers beat a team and the other team didn't kind of show up, which I have to say is kind of rare this season because we were the champs. People
Yeah,
were showing
no,
up.
we got played really hard. Every
We get
team
played really
played us
hard,
hard.
and the other thing is our style is for checking and hitting, and that brings out the physicality of the other team. Look at how many hits people try to put against us compared to the next game. Or even when they played the Lightning, so many times this season when teams came through South Florida, they would play the Lightning and have played an open ass game, and then against the Panthers or vice versa, we'll play a really physical game because we bring that out. Once we hit your defense 3 times in a row, you're gonna snap back. The Leafs, the Lightning, they don't play that way. So the other teams can let them play open because that's how they're playing. So you're not gonna check them. And I'll end with this, and then we can transition to the Leafs and Sens. But why is it that the Sens have owned the Leafs the last 2 seasons? And people keep talking about that. Even the Toronto's, everybody's picking the Leafs. The Leafs should win in 5, should win in 6, but it could be tight. But you know what? And then the question is always like, what? Yeah, the Leafs are better, but what do you make of the Leafs like losing all these games in the regular season? The only reason why that has happened because the Sens almost in every game played the Leafs with a forechecking physical style, not the open style, and the Leafs don't know how to handle that. The same with the Panthers. The Panthers have owned them. Why? Because when the Panthers show up for real against the Leafs and play them physical, it looks the way it looks. They don't know what to do with the puck, and so that is the difference. Almost no other team has played the Leafs that way, that tight, and that physically in the regular season. I mean, so of course it's gonna. So the contrast, like know what you're watching. Just because your team went on a run or won a bunch of games or you're winning easily, doesn't mean that it's going to go well in the playoffs. I mean, look at the Bruins, the last 2 regular seasons before this year,
Yeah, really
great
good
seasons,
example. Yeah,
and then it gets real, and you can't even get to a conference final. And again, I'm not saying the Leafs or the Lions can get there, but a lot of things have to be right and go right for them. And if that's what you're hanging on, I'd rather hang on depth and a system like Maurice has, and a team that's used to playing forechecking and physical and tight and doesn't get down. And if the Panthers are the type of team that if they're losing 4-0 in game one, not only are they not rattled and worried about this not going long, they're playing every series like it's going to go 7. They're going to beat the shit out of you. They're going to say, okay, so this game is not about winning the game, and now it's about making sure that we're getting you for game 6 and 7 and see how much you're gonna be willing to go that far with us because we're gonna keep hitting you, and that's refreshing. You're not chasing the game, you're managing the series, and Maurice coaches that way, and that's why I think the Panthers are dangerous. Because yeah, you can beat them
yeah,
4-0 in a game, but you're gonna pay a price, and
yeah,
you can't say that about most teams.
yeah. And they just drag you underwater. They drag you underwater and see how long you can hold your breath. That's really what the Panthers do. They're like, okay, and we know we can hang to 7 games, in 4 series if we have to, but let's see if you can. And I think just most teams don't have that, man. They don't have that mentality, and coaching is so important in the NHL. You need the right coach, you need the right mentality, you need a few guys in the locker room that can sort of bring it every night. Yeah, it's let's see, man. I want to say Panthers in 6, maybe 7, depending on how we start the series. I can see us losing, the first 2, or 2 out of the first 3 or something like that. With Kachuk getting back into it, and maybe our offense doesn't get the breaks that it needs, as it has happened during the season. But yeah, all right. Well, let's transition into the Senators versus the Leafs, and I think the question that people need to ask, and your point about how the Senators have dominated the Leafs the last 2 years and how it's been dismissed by pundits and people like JD Bunkis, who says, yeah, it's the regular season, who cares? And they don't realize that the Leafs, they play the same fucking way in the regular season than they do in the playoffs. One of the very few teams that are going to play the same exact way. The Leafs do not transition into a more physical game. They don't transition into a forechecking game. Whatever they've played this season, they're going to carry on to the playoffs. Now, they've been playing well in terms of winning and results because their defense, the top 4 defense, has been improved with Tanev especially, and because of Stolars. Let's be real. If they don't sign Stolars, if Samsonov was there, the Leafs are a wildcard team. So I just think that you cannot, like the Lightning, you cannot just rely on the goaltending when you get into the playoffs and think, oh, our goalie's going to hold. Stolars could choke. That's not a playoff goalie. he has no playoffs experience for real. He's not gonna win you 4 series, shutting down the other team. So it's gonna be intriguing in that sense, and because the Leafs are so willing, or well, yeah, they're willing to give the other team the puck in a way, so they can play more than north south thing that everybody keeps talking about. I think they're gonna be really vulnerable because the Senators are a very fast team. That's one thing that they do have. The bottom six of the Senators is not great, but it's better than the Leafs bottom.
It's actually, I mean, not great. I think it's not great by playoff standards because they haven't made the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
But Pinto, Craig, Amadio, and then Sutherland, who's like
Sutherland
a
and
top
yeah,
six
he
player.
could play. Yeah,
Nick Cousins, who what he does back there,
and he can score. Cousins
and I
can give you a
think
goal.
and I
Yeah,
think Adam Gaudette had like 18 or 19 goals this season,
yeah,
or
I don't
something like
know.
that.
They're good.
Their bottom six is way better than the Leafs.
So, so what does that tell you, right? That tells you that the top six for the Leafs, especially that core four, they have to be outstanding. They have to be outstanding every series, not just against the Senators. Even if they get through the Senators in six, let's say,
They have to be McDavid and Drysdale
how
because
are
that's
you
why
going to
the
match
others
up?
go far, right?
Yeah,
And they have to be Makar and McKinney.
it's just I think that to say that they're the clear favorites because they have the better talent and the better goaltending, that's fine if you want to go that route, but you have to be respectful of the Senators. It doesn't matter. They keep talking about experience. What experience? The Leafs have gotten to the playoffs every year for the last 8 years and been bounced either in the first round or the one time. Excuse me, the one time they went to the second round that they barely beat Tampa, and then they got absolutely just caught off guard by the Panthers. So there's no experience there. Matthews and Marner haven't been dragged deep into a really tough series and come out victorious, and they can say, yeah, we know how to win a 7-game series against the Bruins. No, you don't, because you lose every time. You end up either choking it away or you just let the other team take over. So I think it's kind of intriguing that is being viewed as, oh no, like, top end talent, and Matthews has to play the way he's been playing. It's been great. And Marner has his 100 points, and Nylander record in goals for him this year. All these things. And then they just look at goaltending. And at least they mention it. Most pundits have mentioned that goaltending has been great. The goaltending has been great. But I think if Stolarz, gets injured or something happens, they're screwed. And yeah, you could say that about anybody, especially like a team like the Panthers, for example. But freaking dog.
It's okay. But the thing is this, bro. The the Leaves, think about this. The Leaves beat a Tampa team that outplayed them, right? And they needed 3 overtime wins in a series that what they got to play. The Panthers beat them in five. We didn't beat them 5-2 or 6-0 in a game. It wasn't the scoring that beat them. They were all tight games, and we needed an overtime here and 2 overtimes, and we had to. They were the better team. Half our team were AHLers. Like on paper, go back and look at those teams. The Leafs were better because that's the year they had O'Reilly and all these guys. Like they were a better team on paper. They were deeper than the Panthers, and the Panthers beat them in five in tie games. And it wasn't the goaltending that was an issue. I mean, they can make excuses. There might have been a bad goal here or there. I'm sure Bobrovsky also let in a softie here or there. Um, but it's tight. It's hard, right? It's the can you go deep? Can you come out? Look at the Bruins. The Bruins had no offensive talent last year. It only won six with the Panthers because the Panthers are not like a huge offensive team, and because Swayman played out of his mind that series. But the Panthers have played the Bruins in that series, and the Leafs couldn't beat them in the last 3 games of that series against the Bruins that they had. All the games, I don't think anybody scored more than 2 goals. Like it wasn't the defense. They're gonna get tight defense. They got that last year. They got that the year before. They got decent goaltending. They're gonna get it from Stolarz. Stolarz are gonna be good. Like I'm not saying the Leafs. No one's expecting the Leafs to give up 3, 4, 5 goals a game. But the issue is that even giving up 2 or 3, you still can win because you guys have to go to the front of the net, which they don't want to do. So unless the Sens take a bunch of penalties, or somehow magically, these guys get lucky and they get a bunch of lucky goals and stuff from the outside, like maybe you can do that and have a quote unquote easy series and beat them in 5 or 6. But to me, the Sens should have been a playoff team the last 2 years before this one. They were building to this. They were underperforming. They had no goaltending and pretty thin defense. Now they have a pretty decent defense. A top four that's also pretty strong, better than they've ever had. A goaltender that's better than they've ever had, same as the Leafs. and they're built in the way that they play, their physicality, the amount of guys that they have that are playoff ready, man. I've always told you when we play them and it gets real, the Sens look like a playoff team. And I don't mean like a team that can make the playoffs. That's the difference. They look like a team that can hurt you in the playoffs. I don't think they're cup contenders yet. They haven't proven that. But they're a team that I'll be worried about because much like the Bruins used to be, the Bruins didn't have the top talent, but you're going to pay a price to get through that team. And that's the issue with the Sens to me. The Sens, all of these guys I mentioned, Pinto, Craig, Perron, Brady, Kachuk, Batherson is a big dude. Like, they're not afraid of contact. They're not afraid to go. Nick Cousins is dirty. Like, Sutherland is a freaking truck of a guy. Like, you're going to have to put up with those guys game in, out, game out. The other thing about the Sens that people ignore, the Sens have underperformed their scoring, but their chances have been there. They go to the slot at 5-5 as much as anybody in the league. The Leafs are going to have to defend that again and again and again in overdrive, like on overdrive in the playoffs. And the other thing with them is that they, the defensive, the defense for them has been a lot improved, more than people realize. And I think they're the number one team in the league, or at least a very high team, in drawing penalties. The Sens are, because they piss you off. They drag you. I think the Panthers are high too, and the Panthers take a bunch of penalties. But that's the thing. I'd be surprised. I think some Leafs fans need to be careful. The Sens might end up getting more power plays in this series because the Leafs are the ones that are reactionary. OEL can snap and take a bad penalty. Domi, McCabe, Benoit, Scott Lawn. I've seen these guys lose their minds. They're not used to the hitting. They're not used to the physicality. Whereas the Sens, they look for it. They're the initiators. And then you can retaliate and get that penalty. So be careful, man. I'm just saying, the Leafs have the talent. They have a great goaltending, and they do have more experience overall in terms of just the states that they are at as a team. So the Sens could crumble and make a bunch of mistakes. That would be their chance. Like, if the Sens come out and they're nervous and they make a bunch of mistakes and give you the puck, yes, you can put them away. But you're going to have to pay a price, man. And that series is going to be tight. So I just think it just keep being ignored that the Sens are not this, like, wild cardish team. Like, they're a legit playoff machine. And it's going to be a really fascinating series to watch. And I want to see the Leafs, how they react, especially if it does go, like, if they're tied 2-2, those last 3 games, that's where the Leafs tend to fall apart.
Yeah. That's definitely it's just when the pressure's on, right? Especially now, like, I think they just have to get over that hump mentally where for so many years now you failed spectacularly and you've been kind of the laughing stock of the league, even though they probably don't even realize that because they're clueless. But it's just how they're going to react when it gets tight. And also I think this is just tougher for them because had they been matched up against the Panthers, they know, hey, we have to be on our A game. We have to be perfect.
They'll be underdogs.
We have to, like, be our best to beat them, where they might be coming into the series and thinking, we got this,
Well, everybody's picking them. And I'm not saying the players themselves. I think the pressure is on because they're expected to beat the Sens. If the Sens beat the Leafs, that's their Stanley Cup this year. The Sens are going to give it all this season. This series is everything for them. If they can put away the Leafs for the narrative in Canada and for their city, and if they get swept by the Panthers or Lightning the next, they don't care because this is their step. No, go through attack. That's what Marie said about the Panthers. Even if they had lost against the Bruins in that first round when we were down 3-2 and we went to game 7, he said this was so tough and so physical and so insane. These guys have a blueprint for what it looks like for us to win a cup. And they got lucky and, and they were able to advance and made it all the way to the final. So they accelerated the track, which, by the way, there's another thing about the Panthers that people ignoring. This is the year the Panthers were supposed to be peaking. It's just that it just happened we went to back-to-back finals and we had to take time off and we were hurt. But this is when all these guys mentally and physically should be ready to really take over because we overachieved the last 2 years.
Yeah, the timeline was accelerated on the Panthers. Getting to the finals against Vegas, especially hurt, but
like Londello's a vet. He's like 23.
Yeah, a lot of basically everybody on the Panthers, except for maybe 3 of the starters, have experience and either were there last year or the year before or both. And I think that, that's a good point on when you're supposed to be peaking as a team more than an individual. And you can
I think the Sens are starting to enter the peak.
Yeah, and you can look at Matthews and Marner and Nylander and say, well, this is it, right? They're late 20s. This is where Matthews and Nylander especially need to kind of do their thing, and Marner's gonna do it for his contract or whatever. They're very skilled, and I think that what gets missed is, if the Leafs win this series in 6 or 7 or whatever, and Matthews and Marner have a good series. Oh my God, they're great now. They're ready, this and that, and it doesn't work that way. There's a difference between skill and winning in a grinding way. Like you watch Barkov in the playoffs, and in a 7-game series, you might notice him in 2 games where he might score a goal or make an assist, but the other games you're not gonna notice him because he's doing all the dirty work, all the hard work. Him and Reinhardt are just trying to contain the other guys on the top line. And the Leafs just don't have that. Marner and Matthews just don't really have that in them. First of all, they shouldn't even be playing together. But by having them on that top line, you kind of make it easier actually on the opponent, because all Brady Kachuk has to do is just get in Matthews or Marner's grill the whole series. Brady doesn't have to score. He can just fuck around and just start instigating, bump into Stollers a couple times, go after OEL or somebody, like you said, so they can kind of lose their minds. And we'll see, man. I think it's gonna be
Yeah.
super. It's gonna be fun as shit. I'm glad
Yeah,
that
I think it'll be fun. I'll
that
make 2 quick points, man. One
hmm?
is for the Leafs. They're like toward the bottom of the league in high danger shots and chances at 5-on-5. Right? They get them on the power play, so that kind of skews the number. But at 5-on-5, they don't go there a lot, and I told you the Sens do a lot. I told you the lining where the number 3 team outperforming in terms of above expected with the expected goals. Number 1, Toronto Maple Leafs. They are the biggest, by the underlying numbers, the biggest frauds in the league. If they had gotten the goals, if the goaltending had been average, if they had kind of performed around like the Panthers are actually under, they're on the minus side of the expected goal stuff, but meaning the Panthers are much better than the numbers are showing, that the record shows, have played much better than the record shows, and I think the Leafs have played a lot worse than the record shows. And based on their play, the Leafs are actually like a borderline wildcard team. So they will need Stollers to be incredible, and they will need to block a ton of shots, and they will need their stars to really score those key goals like they do in the regular season, which again in the playoffs, much harder to do. And to me, that is the whole argument. It's like you might blow them out a game, you might blow them out in a game, but that's the other thing with the Sens. You might blow them out, but guess what? If you're blowing Brady Kachuk out, if you're blowing Nick Cousins out, you better watch your back. So yeah, I don't think that's going to be as simple. And I think for the Panthers, that is the other key. I think I don't need Barkov and Reinhardt to go off in a series. The highest scoring Panthers in the Stanley Cup Finals that will forever be remembered as a Stanley Cup champion was Evan Rodriguez, the highest points getter for the Panthers in the 7-game series against the Oilers.
Yeah.
You don't need them, and that gives me so much peace because all I need that line to do is to not be outscored and outplayed at 5-on-5. Shut the other guy down. McDavid, 0 points the last 2 games of that series. That's what you need Barkov to do. That's what you need Reinhardt to do. And then that one key goal that Reinhardt scored, that's all you need. The one key goal that Verhaeghe scored. That's it.
Yeah, and the last thing I'll say in general, but it applies to the Leafs as well, is you have to be comfortable in these tight, kind of dirty, gritty games. The Panthers are, of course, that's actually what they want to achieve. That's what they want to get out of you. They want it to be tight. That's why a lot of the series, most of the games are tight. They're 1-goal games or an empty netter or overtime games. And the Leafs, I just don't think they have that. I think the best thing that could happen to the Senators is for every game to just be close. 1-0, 1-1 going into the third, or 2-1 going to the third, or 2-2. That's when you're going to shine. Because if you give the Leafs a reason to play extra hard, so if they're down 2 goals going to the third, they're going to go all out. And then because of their breakaways and the way that they cheat and all that crap, like Nylander is the cheating king of the league, because of that, they're going to score. So if you're not ready for that, you can lose. You can lose in overtime. You can lose those games in the third period. So the best thing that could happen for the Senators is for the game to just be tight. You don't want to just blow them out in the first period and then allow the Leafs 2 periods to come at you, especially the second. That's their best period, right? So it's just a matchup thing, you know. I do think that the Leafs should win that series if they kind of apply themselves, and Stolarz is who he was during the season. They'll win that series in six probably. but
Your dog agrees, bro. Yeah,
but yeah,
I hear what you're saying. Yeah, and I think at the end of the day, to me, my whole point is this: the playoffs are a new season. People forget that. People are trying to apply the regular season logic. It applies when you have built the style to do that. Maurice treats the regular season as a dress rehearsal for the playoffs. The Panthers started hitting more the last month of the season. The hits went up. The forechecking. Maurice, even if they lost, Maurice said, "What?" Somebody asked him, "What do you want the team the most on this last stretch of the season?" He said, "One goal games, whether you win or lose, and I want us to apply the 4 to 5 things, our 4 to 5 principles. I don't care whether we win or lose the game. I want to see us do it this way because he is building the muscle so that when the playoffs hit, if you do this well enough and consistently enough, you have a better shot at winning a cup." That is the way he treats the regular season, where other teams treat it with the record, treat it for the fans, treat it for the goals, for the scoring, and it's fun and it's super fun. I'm sure watching the Lightning this season when they won was super fun to watch all those goals. The Panthers have no interest in any of that stuff. And Maurice couldn't care less. That's not how he watches hockey. So that's my whole point. And I've learned that over the years now with the Panthers is like they have prepared their way to try to compete. And the teams that haven't, they may get through a series or through a round, but good luck getting, to a finals or winning a finals because it takes so much out of you to actually do that. So anyway, I think Vegas, I think Avalanche, I think Panthers, to some extent Oilers, if there's a way for them to get healthy and go on a run. I think those teams are prepared and shown that they can win and can go on a run. I don't think the Lightning are any longer built that way. I don't think the Leafs are built that way. I don't think even Dallas is built that way. So we'll see. But, maybe we're wrong because it's sports, man. But yeah, man, I don't get the pundits. I really don't. And how blind people are
yeah.
to the simple stuff. Bunch of score, they score goals.
Yeah,
Okay.
it is what it is. Sports is fun because of that too. All right, I think we'll wrap it up there. I will say there's always I wanted to ask you, there's always a series, usually, that somebody gets swept. So which team you think is a candidate to getting swept in the first round?
I think this season is hard to say because there is a lot more parity in the league. I could see the Canadians being swept, and I could see because even I think people are sleeping on the Caps because they played badly the last month because they didn't care. They locked up the spot. The Caps are actually a better team than people think. They're a tough team, and the Wild, just not sold on the Wild. Even though Vegas has this thing where like they go up 2-0 and then they just like the Panthers, they just don't show up for the third game. Like the Panthers do that a lot. The Panthers rarely sweep people, and then when they do, it's like super tight against Carolina, where they got outplayed in like 3 of those games. But I would say the Canadians, just because I think the Canadians are a bit of a mirage, and then or the Wild, because I also think they're a bit of a mirage. But I just don't see anyone else getting swept. I don't even think the Blues are going to get swept. They're playing super physical. I think that they're going to work down the Jets a bit. I just those will be the two, man. But I can't say anything. And I think the Caps might surprise some people. I think the Caps could upset the Hurricanes in the second round.
Oh yeah, they should probably be the favorites to get to the Eastern Conference.
They're a big team. They can hit. They can play. They score. The goaltending has been strong.
Yeah.
So yeah. It'll be fun, man.
I think there's a few teams that might win a game, maybe two. Canadians, I think maybe they win a game. I think the Wild as well. Maybe they win 2 games, and I think the Devils.
Oh yeah, no, the Devils are not gonna get swept. That's crazy.
They're injured, but
that series might go 7. I mean, the Hurricanes can.
They don't have the Devils are injured, man. They don't.
I know they are, but they have a good power play. Their defense still decent.
Yeah, and the Hurricanes can.
They have a good.
They can shit the bed.
Can get hot. Yeah, and exactly. The Hurricanes outplayed the Rangers last year and lost in 6. Like that's it. They outplayed the Panthers and lost in 4. So.
Yeah. That's the story of their.
They just not their lives. The right way. Like they have the right system, or they either have the right.
They're always lacking something.
Players, or they have the right players but the wrong system.
Yeah, no, and goaltending has always been an issue in the playoffs for them. Yeah, they just don't hold. All right, guys, we'll wrap it up there. For the series that we didn't cover, next weekend, if we're available, we'll probably kind of give an update of what
I
we
will
think
react. Yeah.
based on what we've seen. Exactly. By then, most of those teams have been 3 or 4 games in. The Panthers would have been already 3 games in. Same with the Leafs. So should be fun to do a review of what's going on and see where we actually have been wrong or right in this episode. So like always, shoot us a comment down low what you think of the episode, our opinions, and who you got between the Leafs and the Sens and why, and who you got between the Panthers and Lightning and why. And the Oilers don't matter. Fuck the Oilers. So yeah, that's just to piss off the few fans that
They'll lose in the second round. It's fine.
I'm kidding, guys. All right, we'll catch you all next week. Peace.
Peace.